As Pesach approaches, many of us have a lot of mixed feelings of how to go to the Leil HaSeder. Leil HaSeder is a beautiful time. All the family is together. Be'ezras Hashem. We should all have all our children at our Seder table. However, it comes with that, in the parasha that we're in, it comes with a lot of mixed feelings, especially when it comes to the part of the Haggadah, Kineged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. Right? The Torah addresses all kinds of children and how the Leil HaSeder is supposed to approach them. So the famous one is Rasha Mahu Omer, Ma Avoida Hazois Lochem, Lefi Shahitzi Atzim Min HaKlal Kafar Be'ikar. What do we answer him? Va'af Ata, Rabal Haggadah says, Hakei Es Shinov. Hakei Es Shinov, in contrary to what many people explain, it's not hit him in the teeth, not punch him in the teeth. It's Hakei with a kuf, not with a chaf. Hakei is dull. Dull his teeth, dull the bite. Let's try to understand that. And then what do we tell him? Va'emerloi, b'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim li v'loi loi, ilu haya sham loi haya nigal. If you would have been there, you would never have came out of Mitzrayim. What are we telling him? What exactly are we sharing with him and telling him? That if he were there, B'shas Yetzias Mitzrayim, he wouldn't have came out. What's the point? I saw some Mefarshim even ask that there's no point to that. He's here today. What's the difference? Historically, maybe he wouldn't have been here. I'm here today, now. So what's the message that we're telling him? A few years ago, I thought of this idea. I wanted to share it with you. And for that, I'd like to first tell you a few stories, a few short stories, in order to help us understand this part of the Haggadah. The first story is a famous story with Reb Shimon Schwab. Reb Shimon Schwab, when he was a bacher, it's a known story. He went to the Chafetz Chaim. There's a lot of limudim, a lot of things he learned from that visit, the Shabbos that he had with the Chafetz Chaim. But one is the Chafetz Chaim asked him, how come I'm a Levi? How come I'm a Kohen and you're not? He asked Rabbi Schwab. He asked Reb Shimon, how come you're a Yisrael and I'm a Kohen? The Chafetz Chaim was a Kohen. So Reb Schwab says he didn't really know what exactly the Chafetz Chaim wanted him to answer. He didn't understand the question really. What do you mean? He says, because my father is not a Kohen, so I'm not a Kohen. So he says, so why is your father not a Kohen? Because his father wasn't a Kohen. Etc. It went on for a few minutes, I think, until the Chafetz Chaim said, I'll tell you why I am a Kohen and you're not a Kohen. Because at Maimed Har Sinai, after Maimed Har Sinai, by the Maisa Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu screamed out, Mila Hashem Elai. Mila Hashem Elai. And who came? Who came running? Shevet Levi came running. And therefore, because my father answered that question of Mila Hashem Elai, and he said, Ani, for that, I'm a Kohen. So next time Hashem screams out, Mila Hashem Elai, go. That's one story that the Chafetz Chaim taught Reb Shimon Schwab. Another story I wanted to share with you is an unbelievable story. It's Nageya actually to Erev Pesach specifically. It's a story with Reb Mordechai Pogromansky. Reb Mordechai Pogromansky was a famous Gadol v'Yisrael, Tzaddik Yisoid Olam, Talmud Chacham Muflig, before the war, and he lived a few years after the war. He died young. He was in ghetto Kovna, in the ghetto of Kovna. There used to be something in the Nazim Yamach Shemo, used to have something called akziot, an action, where they come in and they give a certain amount of people that they want, and they clear them out, and they take them out to the concentration camps. A few months before Pesach, there was a rumor that the next akция that's going to be is going to be an akция against children. They're going to take all the children away. And there was a lot of metach, a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety for people worried that all of a sudden all their kids will be taken away, chas v'shalom. As Pesach approaches, everyone is preparing for Pesach in the ghetto with whatever the means they had. Erev Pesach, Yimach Shemam, the Nazim decided to come in, and on Erev Pesach, on Yud Daled Nisan, they came in and took all the kids that they could find out of Ghetto Kovna. There was a lot of pain. And people were really angry. Their Seder table was set up. It's the light, it's the night of Higadat Olabincha Bayayim Ahu. It's the night we spend with our children to pass on the Messiahs of Yetzias Mitzrayim. On that day, the Nazim, probably purposely, took away all the children. No Higadat Olabincha. People threw out of their homes. They threw out the Seder table. They threw out matzahs. There was on the streets licht. Some Talmidim came back into the house where Mordechai Pogomansky was saying, and they said, Oy vey Rebbe, the kfira was geht on in gas, the kfira that's going on in the streets, it's terrible. So Mordechai Pogomansky said, excuse me, tell me again, what exactly, where's the kfira, what's the story? So there again, they described, there was the akция, people are throwing their clay kodesh out on the streets. Mordechai Pogomansky said, kfira? I don't see any kfira over here. I see Amunah. They're angry at Hashem, but they're not being kaifer in the Rabbeinu Shalom. They're angry. Being angry at the Rabbeinu Shalom, said Mordechai Pogomansky, isn't defined as kfira. That's an expression, it's part of a relationship. It could be a bad part of the relationship, but that's not defined as kfira. That's anger, that's frustration. I'll just add to that a beautiful thing that I thought to add is a few years ago I saw a video of a rabbi who said one time he was at a bar mitzvah. Many years ago he was at a bar mitzvah. And he got up to talk and he started speaking about the schus of the bar mitzvah boy to become part of Klal Yisrael, Chayav b'mitzvahs, and he started speaking about the Rabbeinu Shalom. And there was the grandmother who went through the war, a Holocaust survivor. She was there, and obviously she couldn't hold herself back. The Holocaust really shook her up, and shook up her emunah and kesher to the Rabbeinu Shalom, and she was quite angry at Hashem. And she screamed out during his sermon, during his speech, what, Rabbeinu Shalom, what are you talking about? Where is he? What did he do? Of course, he let her finish. After he spoke, then he spoke to her personally. And there happens to be someone videoed that part of the conversation as well. And he tells this lady who suffered the Holocaust, he tells her, you know, you have a much better kesher with the Rabbeinu Shalom than me, in a certain sense. Every night you go to sleep, you're angry at Hashem. You get up in the morning, you think about you're angry at Hashem. You think about Hashem all the time. I don't think about Hashem so much. Right? You're angry at Hashem, but you think about Hashem. You know that there's a Rabbeinu Shalom. You have a relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's how we left it. A few years later, this lady passed away. And she left in her tzavor. He gets a phone call, please come to the levaya, this rabbi. And the lady wrote in her tzavor that she wants that rabbi to be maspid her at her levaya, because he was the only man who properly understood her. That's what Reb Mordechai Pogomansky was telling his Talmidim. It's not kfira, there's emunah. But this relationship in Amunah could sometimes have kas. Don't define that as kfira. Now I want to get to the point to explain the Haggadah. What are we telling this young man who walks in angry with a question of Ma avodah hazois? What's going on here? Not interested. I don't want. He's coming in bitter. So the first thing we do is we have to understand that we have to minimize his bitterness. Hake, dull his teeth. Hake es shinov. Dull the bite. The bite shouldn't be so fierce. The bite shouldn't be so bitter. The bite shouldn't be so difficult. And how do we do that? We tell him something. We tell him, Ilu hayasham loy hayanigel. How is that going to dull? How is that going to free him? How is that going to make him feel any better or understand anything? Yes, Reb Shimon Russell, in the beginning of his book, addressing parents who are dealing with crisis chinuch in their home, all different kinds of difficulties. And sometimes us as parents, we have this similar question. Mazois, ma avodah hazois lachem. Where did this come to us? It's a similar question. Sometimes we're bitter when we ask that question. It's a bitter question. What happened? How? So he says in the beginning of the book, he brings the Rabbeinu Bachya. That the Rabbeinu Bachya says that we should all know that everything that happens in our lives, before we were born, when we were upstairs in Shamayim, Tachas Kisei HaKavod, our neshamas were presented with what our lives are going to look like. And we were asked, are you interested? Do you want to be born into this situation or not? And after we say yes, that's when we come here. So knowing that this is what we chose, and we chose this when we had the Seichel HaYashar B'Yoser, we only had a neshama, not a guf. And our neshama picked all the struggles we're going through. And that sometimes can many times actually help the parent going through his struggle. That's what I want to tell you, is what the Baal Haggadah tells us to tell our children. What do we tell them? We tell them that a few thousand years ago, there were about 10 million Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in Mitzrayim. During the Makkas, the 10 Makkas, there were at least 10 million Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in Mitzrayim. And Hashem sent Moshe Rabbeinu to ask them a question. The question he sent them to ask is, who wants to go out and within 50 days be roy for Kabbalah HaTorah and become the Am HaNivchar? 8 million out of those 10 million, Chamushim Olu Min Ha'oretz, 1/5 said yes, 4/5 said no. Every neshama that is today with us is a descendant, or actually not only a descendant, is the Shorish Neshama of those 600,000 Yidden who said yes and answered, we want to come out of Mitzrayim. We want to be Bnei Yisrael. We want to be the Am HaNivchar. It was a difficult choice. Like I said, 4 out of 5 of their friends said no. But you said yes. So therefore we tell him, Ilu hayita sham, if you were there at the time and you would have said no, maybe you wouldn't be here. But if you are here, obviously your neshama tahira in Mitzrayim said, yes, I want to go out. My choice is to leave Mitzrayim and become Bnei Yisrael. So we tell this bitter person, we tell this boy or girl who was coming in with questions of Mazois ha'avodah hazois lachem, and we tell him, first of all, we have to know, like I said, these are bitter questions. These are not kfira questions. This is a relationship question that they're having with the Rabbeinu Shalom. Hakei Yeshinov, dull him, explain him. You're part of us. You're one of us. You actually, many years ago, your neshama was one of those neshamas that said, I want to come out. And that's why you're here tonight. Let's enjoy the night together, understanding every neshama we see in Klal Yisrael, every descendant, every Yid who's alive today. Shoirish Nishmasai was Oimid b'nisoyin hagadol b'Mitzrayim, and said, yes, Rebbeinu Shalom, I want to be with you. When we see our children, when we see any child of Klal Yisrael, we have to know that that neshama is a neshama that was boicher b'toiv and is just going through difficulties now. Be'ezras Hashem, we know Chazal say, Be'pesach nigalu, u'be'pesach asidim ligoil. We should all be zoicha together with Mashiach Tzidkenu to be dancing this Pesach b'rechoivos Yerushalayim with Mashiach Tzidkenu, min noichal, min azvochim, u'min apsochim.